Happy Halloween, everybody. It's October 31st, 2022, and I just wanted to say a couple of things before we start. I want to first say that no, this is not a Halloween costume, and I'll explain that in a moment. So what I want to tell you is that I did a poll recently, I think I started Saturday. It was over the weekend. I think I put it up yesterday, and almost unanimously, I got the same message from everybody. We want to hear the hardcore stuff. So I answered that request, and I did 4 videos. And by the time I uploaded the third one, I had already lost 5 subscribers. And I thought that was interesting. And then I had some trolls, which I can't really call them trolls. I guess you could say some critical people. One of them actually accused me of doing this for the money. And I thought that was interesting. So I want to address that real quick. No, I'm not doing this for the money. There's no money to be made. I spend about $60 a month in website fees and other types of software fees just to be able to do these short little videos or long videos, whatever you want to call them, just to do these controversial videos. And it doesn't make me a penny. In fact, it feels like the more videos I do, the better I feel, because I'm getting the story out and I'm getting it off my chest. But the further down in the pit I go. I don't know what that means, but I'm trying to stay optimistic about it. But you have to be a realist here, because there's no benefit in doing this, other than there's people out there that may have went through something like this, and maybe I'll give them the courage to come forward and tell their story too. Because the more people that come forward, the better it is. And so there's no money to be made. It's actually a money pit. Now, as far as me making things up, no, absolutely not. If I were to make things up, I would have this grandiose story to tell. And I don't. Actually, I don't. I have a story that's very dark, and it's very uncomfortable to talk about it, but it gets easier. And it needs to be talked about because it's happened to a lot of people. And I've met people just in the last couple of months that have had similar things happen to them. And, you know, they're the people that I do this for. It's the people that need a voice, because they're afraid to come forward, or there's just too much to lose. And since I've already lost everything, I figured, hey, why not just go all the way? And now if you're looking at this right here, this is probably the low is probably as low as I'm going to go, because this is like the bottom of the rabbit hole, I guess, for me, because, you know, once you start talking about something like this, then it really goes into left field. So let's get into left field. Let's get into the far side. Let's get into the Twilight Zone here. This is an actual satanic ritual robe, and the reason that I have it is because I had it made about, I would say, early part of 2006. And the reason I had it made is because going all the way back to 2003, I had a violent allergic reaction to the allergy drug Singulair, and I was hospitalized. I was in and out of the hospital, and they didn't want to keep me. They kept kicking me out, and after the 3rd time, they had to keep me because I had a really high fever and was really, really sick. And on the last day that I was in the hospital, just before they discharged me, they finally let me take a shower. And this was like 4 days, I think I was in there. They ran all these tests. They concluded it was that it was allergic reaction to the drug. And so they were going to release me. And I finally got to take a shower. When I got out of the shower, I walked past this room on the way back to mine, and there was this old man who was laying in there, and he looked up at me when I glanced in, and he said, "Help me." And it looked like he had bed sores or something all over his arms. There was these lesions. I think he had them on his face too, but he looked really, really bad and like he was really suffering. And I had this empathic moment. I felt his pain. I broke down and I cried on the way back to the room. And that was the first time that I had any type of like an empathic psychic experience. So for the next 3 weeks, I had random telepathic and empathic experiences where I would feel people's, I would feel sadness. I would feel the negative emotions the strongest. And I could tell that it was directional and who it was coming from. In one case, it was in a UPS store. And I'm inside the UPS store with about 3 other guys ahead of me. And this woman walks in, and instead of getting right behind me, she stays all the way at the back corner of the store. And I picked up telepathically that she had been raped, and she felt very uncomfortable being around men, especially in a small store like that. So all of this kind of ended after the end of the 3rd week, just as quick as it started. It just went away. And then I had a telepathic download, and the telepathic download said that I needed to find other people who were like myself and that they were on the internet. So I spent the next 2 years searching, and I looked high and low. I joined as many psychic groups that I could find. I looked all over the place. I never checked into the starseed category because what was really going on with me is that I was being subconsciously programmed to find a satanic cult called the Joy of Satan. This is what I call a virtual temple complex. And what a virtual temple complex is, it's just like it used to be in the ancient times, and when they built megalithic structures for the people to worship them in, the gods, the extraterrestrials. What they did is they would create temple structures, and they would create religions, usually composite religions that were based on previous religions that they had already given the population, and then they would create new ones by just mixing the theologies together, and they would kind of reinvent the gods a bit and reintroduce it in stage contact events that had a theological facade. So that was the ancient temple complexes. Today, they're using social media, they're using the internet. So this is now a virtual temple complex. So that's what a virtual temple complex is. And it's a dangerous place because the extraterrestrials that are responsible for these virtual temple complexes are the same extraterrestrials that built the pyramids. They're the same extraterrestrials that have been staging the different types of abductions and other events in people's lives. They are the Draco-Orion reptilians, the ones that have the treaties with the U.S. military, the U.S. government, and many other governments around the world, and the ones that are behind the World Economic Forum depopulation program. They're the people behind individuals like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates, and so on and so forth. So these aren't good beings, they're bad. And in this case, they created this Joy of Satan group. Now, when you get into the Joy of Satan, it's not satanic. Well, it is, but it isn't. It's actually not the worship, but the admiration or the recognition of Enki, or Ea, the creator of humanity, according to the Sumerian clay tablets. So it's an Enki Ea cult that uses Satanism as psychological camouflage to hide it, to hide what's going on, because really what's going on inside that group is actually staged extraterrestrial contact using a composite theological facade or envelope around it that camouflages it from mainstream UFO researchers and other paranormal researchers. Because, you know, if you get paranormal researchers that actually take a little bit of a deeper look into it, they're going to see that it's also a UFO ET cult as well, that combines the books of Zecharia Sitchin, the writings or the Sumerian clay tablets, the whole Enki Ea story with the Anunnaki. It's actually what it is. It's the Anunnaki are the gods that you work with in the Joy of Satan. So it's just it's something that paranormal researchers would just, not want to get involved with, and they haven't. And when you try to get UFO researchers in on it, they have an aversion to it. And I've tried since 2008 to tell people about this, that, hey, I can prove that the ancient alien hypothesis actually is real because it's being done in the modern day using social media right in front of everybody. And this is one of many places, and it isn't just the Joy of Satan. there's other groups like this. I found demonology groups that I went into back 15 years ago when I was involved with the Joy of Satan. And some of those people were reporting the same type of so-called demonic contact or pagan god contact. It's the kind of contact where the so-called guardian demon comes through, or this pagan god comes through to establish contact with someone who's doing the rituals, and then they claim to be a spouse from an extraterrestrial civilization, at which point they enter into an abusive relationship with the person. So, or sometimes it's a positive one, but it always ends, and it usually always ends with a lot of problems. Either because in my case, what it turned into, besides for abuse, it also turned into a type of past life regression torture, past life emotional regression torture. I mean, they use all sorts of miserable things to make me just as miserable as they possibly could. And this was all Draco ETs. Now, some of the people in the group, they had positive experiences. But at some point, they broke us all up. So there's no telling what happened to those people that were having the positive experiences, because it all started positive for all of us. And then it went negative. There's also a pattern like this that you can find in the New Age movement. It's all positive at first, but then it starts to get bad. And that's why there's a backlash against the New Age movement. So I just want to talk about that. Now, this is just the intro video to this whole discussion. This is the first video in a series of videos that I'm going to do. And I'm just scratching the surface here, because when I go back and do this again, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to go into the Joy of Satan website, and the other there's another website connected to it. I may go into that one, I may not, because it may be unfit for YouTube. I may do that on another uncensored platform. But for the most part, I'm just going to do the Joy of Satan and the Exposing Christianity website that's connected to it, because that's how I was lured into the whole virtual temple complex by these Orion Draco ETs. And so I'm going to give you a virtual tour of the website. I'm going to tell stories from the experiences that I had in the 7 months that I was in it. I'm going to tell you how they use the magic system and to hide or to create scenarios where they can institute extraterrestrial contact, such as if you do an incubus or a succubus ritual. They use that as a way to introduce contact with new ETs that come into the picture. I'll explain all of that, and I'll go into how the mind control works, along with the psychology behind it that gets you into the cult, because it was very consistent with everybody that I talked to, that I actually got to know. And so when I call myself a group contactee, yeah, I've always been a group contactee from the end of 2005 with this particular pagan cult. But after that, I started to meet people outside of it, of course, and then I started having mutual paranormal or psychic extraterrestrial oriented experiences with them, and it still happens to this day. So, and of course, there's evidence of that in some of my videos and things that I talk about. And if I get my friend Diane to do a video with me, hopefully, maybe, I don't know, she can tell you about the extensive downloads that she had that led me to realize that I'm a MyLab and so forth. But what the Joy of Satan is, basically, it is a joint extraterrestrial U.S. military and the military of other countries, its intelligence agencies as well. The world government is actually behind the Joy of Satan, even though the people in it are completely opposed to that. They think that they're against it. In reality, it's really the bad guys running the group. And who would have thought? Obviously, it's a satanic cult. So that fits the definition of being rotten to the core anyway. We're used to the Dracos and the Orion ETs involving themselves with human trafficking and satanic cults and so forth, and Luciferian cults. And if you go back in time and you look at all of the barbaric religions we've been given, including Christianity and Islam and Judaism and all the rest, they all have human sacrifice and slavery and a lot of other things built into their theology, because they're not meant to enlighten us. They're meant to make us abuse ourselves and fight with one another. And the Joy of Satan is no different. And what's interesting, there's a phrase on the front of the website, which I'll get to when I get into that part of this. It says, darkness is light turned inside out. So what that really is saying is it's just an inversion of the New Age movement. it's the dark side of the New Age movement. So instead of light, it's darkness, and that's your light. But in reality, both paths go to the same destination, which is darkness. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's a little bit of a departure from the typical information, but what I'm doing is fully exposing everything that I've been through, and because it needs to be exposed. And there's people going into that Joy of Satan right now that are likely in the situation that I was. There's teenagers, there's young kids. The youngest person that was in that group when I was in it was 13. So if you can imagine a 13-year-old going behind their parents' back and having extraterrestrial contact wrapped in a satanic facade, which then turns into abusive contact later in life, well then, you know, it's something that people should know about, because it isn't good for anybody. And I need to get the word out. So I'll see you guys soon. I'm looking forward to doing the next videos, you know, the next couple, especially these videos, because they're going to be interesting. So anyway, take care and good night, and have a happy Halloween.